Today we'll be looking at solving equations symbolically. Our objectives will be to use the addition property, to use the multiplication property, and then to use the addition and multiplication properties combined. So let's begin with the addition property. Now I really think that what we're about to do here as far as the addition and multiplication properties are things that should be a review for most of you. So let's look very quickly at these two properties. The addition property is what gives you the right to add or subtract anything you would like to from one side of the equation, provided you'll do the same thing to the other side. So when you look at this equation, the thought that should enter your mind is I need to subtract 5 from both sides. That will leave me with x is equal to 10. If our goal is to solve, then I've arrived. Please remember that that 10 is the one solution to this equation. If you took this 10, you could plug it back in up here, and what you should get is a true statement. Let's continue to the multiplication property, and once again I think you should be very familiar with this. If I give you an equation, 5x is equal to 20, and I ask you to solve, your first step would be to divide both sides by 5, and that would give you x is equal to 4. Once again, this is the solution, and if you took that and plugged it in right there, you could check to make sure it works, and it does. Next, what we want to do is we want to look at combining these two properties. So let me give you a problem where you'll need to combine these properties. Your first step in solving this one would be to distribute the 3 here. So you'll multiply each of those pieces by 3. And on this side, some of you will think of it as distributing the sign. Others of you will think of it as multiplying by a -1. But regardless, what happens is that everything inside that set of parentheses changes signs. So let's look at how this should work. Our next line would be 6x minus 15 is equal to 10 minus x minus 5. Notice this sign has changed and this sign has changed. Next, we would like to look at each side of the equation and see if there are any like terms we can combine. So let's look at this side first. I see 6x minus 15, and there are no like terms there. Let me go to the other side. Over here I have a 10 and I have a minus 5. I'm combining those, so let's go ahead and do that. I will get 6x minus 15 is equal to a -x plus 5. Your next step would be to add 15 to both sides. When I do that, I should get 6x is equal to a -x plus 20. I would add x to both sides now and get 7x is equal to 20. Then I would need to divide both sides by 7, and I would get x is equal to 20 divided by 7. It would be a little bit more difficult, but you actually could take this, plug it back in, probably using your calculator if you're going to do it, and check that it does indeed give you a true statement. But it does if you plug that in to both of the x's in the original problem. Let's look at another problem combining multiplication and addition properties. If you're feeling pretty good about this, you may want to stop the video right now and see if you can actually work this problem and get the correct answer. Come back and check, or follow me through if you're unsure. I know that many of you looked at this and said, oh dear, here we go, there are fractions here, and I don't do fractions. But I want to show you some steps that may help you in doing these fractions. Once again, let me remind you, we're going to start by distributing. We're going to multiply 1/2 times x and 1/2 times that 3. Over here, we'll distribute this and this. Now, 1/2 times 1 right there would give us 1/2 x. So that one's not a big deal. But for the next piece, if you want to multiply 1/2 times 3, if you want to do that on your calculator, that's perfectly okay with me. Just make sure that you put your fractions in parentheses if you're going to do that. So on your calculator, it would look like this. 1 divided by 2, close parentheses, and then I'm multiplying times 3. This would give you 1.5, but we're looking for it in the form of a fraction. So don't forget how to convert that to a fraction. Use your math key, and then number 1 says fraction. If you'll enter that, your calculator will come back and tell you that that fraction is 3/2. So that's where this number right here came from. Notice it was a positive times a negative, so that's where the sign came from. Minus, I need to do this times 2. The same steps would give you 4/3, and then 2/3 times 5. But notice this time it's a negative times a negative, so it's going to be a positive right here. Use your calculator to do 2/3 times 5. You should be able to get the 10/3. And then it's equal to 5/12. I want you to notice I am focusing on you using the calculator for those fractions if you're not comfortable doing them manually. What we need to do next is combine like terms. Well, once again, I want you to notice over here I have a 1/2 x minus 4/3 x. You can do that step on your calculator as well. Combine those terms. And then I have a negative 3/2 and a 10/3. You can add those together using your calculator. Please do not just look at what I'm putting on the screen, but grab your calculator and check to make sure that you actually do get a negative 5/6 x plus 11/6 is equal to 5/12. Our next step would be to subtract 11/6 from both sides. Let me clean those things off the screen so I have a place to put this. When you subtract that, once again using your calculator, you should get negative 5/6x is equal to a negative 17/12. Your next step is to divide both sides by a negative 5/6. That will give you x is equal to a positive 17/10. Once again, I encourage you to please make sure that you're doing these steps on your calculator so that you actually know how to do them later when you need to for homework or for an exam. You will have a few of these to do in your homework, but the assumption is here that you know how to do these steps. If you're uncomfortable with them, I would suggest that you get your book and work a few extra problems. Remember, the odd ones have answers in the back so that you can check them. I do not have a problem with you using your calculator for decimals or for fractions. You'll have that available on your test. But I do have a problem if you cannot get through the steps even using your calculator. So please do a couple of these problems so that you're comfortable with what may be expected of you later. I want to leave you with this thought today. A man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. Make sure that you're comfortable with who you are. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you soon.